I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold.
This is where the fun begins.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Jedi Knights, the official Star Wars podcast for Joy Clicks. I'm your host today, Christian Buckley. Joining me, as always, for episode 91 is my Buryaga, because we got some High Republic talk today, Mike Connors.
Oh yeah. How are you, my man? I'm so excited to talk about the High Republic. Some good rumors. I feel like we've been talking about rumors a lot recently. But we got some interesting stuff on the docket, and I'm really excited to talk about it with you, man.
Absolutely. I'm quite excited. You know, San Diego Comic-Con has been happening, I guess. I wasn't aware it was going on yet.
Me either.
We have some interesting takeaways from the Star Wars sect of SDCC 2021, which we will go over. And like you said, some rumors. And of course, the new episode of The Bad Batch. So before we get to all that, though, how you doing, Mike? How you been? Any Star Wars stuff on the plate? Anything else you want to open the show with?
You know, I said last week that I wanted to sort of get back into the Star Wars Battlefront game, and or grind rather. And you know, I haven't really put it up yet. I haven't played it at all. So I'm hoping, you know, in the coming days, my schedule will sort of, you know, become less hectic, and I'll have some time to play some heroes versus villains or something like that. Because I've been craving just spending some time playing with that game for whatever reason. So hopefully I can do that sometime soon. But what about you, my man?
As I was coming up here to start up recording today, I remembered, on Xbox, OG Battlefront 2 is on sale for $5, and that's probably ending soon. So I did want to pick it up just so I could do it split screen. You know, me and my brother, we could play it a little bit like we used to on the PS2. But when it comes to greater Star Wars stuff, nothing major at the moment. As far as sci-fi goes, Star Wars tangentially, I'm almost done with Halo 2, which is fun.
Oh, there you go. Do you think you'll finish it soon? Sometime soon?
Oh, I think I'll finish it tonight. I got 2 missions left, so.
Oh, okay, nice. Maybe I'll tune in.
Hell yeah.
Twitch, right?
Twitch.tv/Chun2D2. That is correct.
Yeah.
Honestly, out of the 2 Halo games so far, I'm surprised at how many times I've been like, Star Wars, you know, like just because they make some jokes. Like, I think in both games, somebody said, I've got a bad feeling about this, and I was like, you did it.
Yeah, it's hard to, you know, get away from that, especially when you're like creating sci-fi and everything. I feel like it's just, no matter if you try, even if you try not to like have those sort of influences be out there, like they're still gonna be easy to spot. But Halo's a great story. Definitely probably one of my favorite video game series of all time. I think I brought Halo 3 to the Joy-Clicks Hall of Game. Was not accepted, but no hard feelings.
Right.
One of these days.
Well, I know you can't bring that one again specifically, but I have played 1 and 2, and I'll probably have played the whole series by the time we meet again in September. So just keep that in mind. I have experience now. So
that's true. You could, and I'm not saying you will, but you could bring it up again. So fingers crossed.
Well, why don't we get into From the Jedi Archives, our weekly segment where we pull from the sacred Jedi texts of Wikipedia to educate each other and the audience on something in Star Wars. Mike, what did you pull this week?
So I pulled, and I realize now as I'm looking at the Wikipedia page, so I'm going to stall so I can press canon instead of legends. I realized that I picked the planet of Nar Shaddaa. Are you familiar with Nar Shaddaa?
Why am I?
Yeah, it's a familiar name, right? So it's nicknamed the Smuggler's Moon. It's the notorious moon of the planet Nal Hutta, homeworld of the Hutt species. It was home to a large criminal underworld dominated by bounty hunters and Hutt crime lords. So it's like a city planet, basically. They call it an ecumenopolis.
Okay.
Similar to Coruscant.
Wait.
The entire surface of Nar Shaddaa was covered in urban sprawl.
Is this in Shadows of the Empire?
I believe it's in Shadows of the Empire. It's mentioned in Jedi Fallen Order, it says. It seems like it's in a lot of different comic books. And when I was looking at the Legends tab, it did have a fair amount, like a lot, actually. a lot of appearances. So you can look through it yourself. Honestly, I'm surprised that like this hasn't been shown really like in in greater detail. It's really just seems like it's been mentioned like a lot of times. But I thought it was interesting just because of the fact that it was sort of like Coruscant, it's just one big city planet, which I always thought was really cool.
Yeah, I wonder if, you know, in the greater Star Wars galaxy, there's actually more instances of planets like Coruscant. Like, do you think that would make Coruscant less special? Because I remember in the High Republic, that was such a big deal. Of, like, the Outer Rim is like, what? There's a city that's a planet? Like, that was just one thing. So I wonder if that's part of the reason the hesitation's there to bring it into the canon.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder that too. And when you look at the Star Wars wiki for, I don't even know if I'm saying the word right, Ecumenopolis, like a city that encompasses the entire planet. It says that, you know, Coruscant and Nar Shaddaa are two of them, but, you know, you also have Hosnian Prime, you know, the New Republic capital that we saw blow up in Episode 7.
Mm-hmm.
Taris, which is in, you know, Knights of the Old Republic, but I think is canonized. A place called Uchinao, and also Denon. So, you know, there are multiple places. I guess it's just, you might be right, they don't want to lose the specialness of Coruscant by putting it on screen. Interesting stuff, though.
Sure, yeah. Excellent pick.
Thank you, my man. What'd you pick?
This week I pulled Wedge Antilles.
Okay, that's nice. That's a good one.
Wedge Antilles.
Spit some facts about him.
Wedge Antilles is a human male, was a famed Corellian pilot and general, known as a hero of the Republic and New Republic. Orphaned at age 17, he joined the rebellion after Imperial forces killed his girlfriend, Mala Tenero. A standout fighter pilot, he was one of the few to survive the Battle of Yavin, after which he founded Rogue Squadron with his best friend Luke Skywalker. So, yeah, you know, childhood friend of Luke. Grew up together, I believe. They are just best buds. Wedge Antilles made his appearance in Episode 4 and returned for 2 seconds. Excuse me, in The Rise of Skywalker.
He did, yeah.
But I wanted to highlight Wedge because I think on this very show, you and I have been like, who the hell likes the Wedge, right? At least I was.
Yes. I mean, I always thought that he was sort of like overhyped. He had like, you know, 2 lines maybe in Episode 4, and then just like kind of showed up. Like, I just don't believe that like Luke Skywalker and Wedge Antilles are like such great friends. Like, I haven't seen that, you know.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I think it's a generational thing, like we've said, where the generations above us like Wedge because some of the nerds who liked Star Wars growing up didn't like the Jedi. They thought they were too cool, so they wanted something more real. And then they're like, I like the pilots. What's that one's name? Wedge? Oh, yeah, Wedge. Wedge is my guy. You know, like, I think that was it. That's exactly the hype. It's just like Boba Fett. So,
yeah. No, totally. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. Like, Wedge Antilles, like, is a cool character. Like, he definitely is like a great fighter pilot, and it's cool that we got to see him in The Rise of Skywalker. But just seemed, I don't know. He's just not as big as a character as like a lot of people like to make him out to be. At least in the movies.
Yeah.
I guess you know, maybe he might have moments of redemption in a comic or a book or something like that.
Sure.
But
Like,
I always thought he was cool, but what are you going to say?
I was going to say, I feel like people talk about him on the same level that people talk about Lando. And it's like, Lando is like much closer to being a full character than Wedge is. I still think Lando isn't really, like, at least in the original trilogy, doesn't feel like a fully developed character. Because in my head, based off of the time we spend in those movies, it's like Han, Luke, Leia, maybe Han, Luke, Leia, and Vader are like the only realized characters in the original trilogy to me. Like, they are really the only ones that feel like a complete person, complete character, and then everyone else is like almost there or not at all.
I feel like I'd have to disagree with you on that. I think Lando Calrissian, like, maybe a little bit, like I think his character is much more developed than, like, you know, a Wedge Antilles.
Oh, absolutely, yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. And I think that he, at least this is my opinion, I think that he does have like a pretty decently fleshed out character when it comes to like Star Wars. It's just that it's so big. Like,
Yeah,
the story is, and they only have 6 hours to tell it. So with those restraints, I feel like he definitely like has a bit going on. But like, yeah, when you compare him to like a Wedge Antilles, they're just not on the same level. Like,
exactly,
I see what
yeah.
you mean.
No, yeah, because Lando, don't get me wrong, I love Lando, and I think he's a good, unique character in that trilogy. I just think he's as fleshed out, I think, as Ben and Yoda are. Of like, they're there, they have importance, but what makes them tick isn't really the question the way it is for Han, Luke, Leia, and Vader in that trilogy, which...
This is true.
I can't even say that about Wedge, though. Like, Wedge, no. Wedge is not even close to Lando, Yoda level, but people act like he is.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he's a fun character to, like, you know, point out while you're watching it.
Yeah.
But I think he definitely, like, doesn't... I don't want to say deserve, but, like, I just don't think that, like, the hype matches like his character, for sure.
Yeah, like
though he is like, you know, what?
I just wanted to throw in, like, for our generation, that's like how I love Plo Koon. Like, taking out Clone Wars, right? Like, just the movies alone, it's the same thing, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't look at people who like Wedge Antilles and be like, oh, you know, like that's lame or whatever, but. Because it's you know, he's a cool character when you sort of like look at him, you know, and you see what he's done for the rebellion and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, putting him on the same level as like a Luke or Leia, I don't know. That seems a bit of a stretch. Fun fact about Wedge Antilles, though, I think he's the actor who played it is like Ewan McGregor's like uncle or something like that.
Yeah.
Very fun fact. Thought that was fun.
Yeah, Star Wars is about family, Mike.
Yeah, literally.
Well, why don't we get into some news? Kicking off this week, Lucasfilm has hired a new digital effects, specifically senior facial capture artist hire, and it is from the community of Star Wars fans, Mike. I don't know if you heard about this.
So I didn't, and I'm happy that you're bringing this up because, you know, I don't think that we've ever seen something like this before, at least in the 91 episodes that we've been doing Jedi Knights.
Yeah,
I just think it's very cool. It's very cool that someone from, you know, our fandom was recognized for their work.
Yeah. So the person who was hired is YouTuber Shamook. Shamook, you might not recognize the name, but their work you absolutely will because it was all over the internet last year. Specifically, their video fixing, which they did, the Luke Skywalker Mark Hamill de-aged face in Mando Season 2 through using deepfake tech. This was all over the internet. Everybody was sharing it around, being like, wow, I can't believe this person did this on their own PC at home when, you know, like, ILM is ILM. So it blew up. It went viral. Shamook had a handful of other ones. I think you mentioned one of these one time. There was, like, the Han Solo, like, Solo, A Star Wars Story, Alden Ehrenreich replaced with Harrison Ford, and it looked really good. So, like, impressive work for this individual who's doing this for fun, basically, but does have experience.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, I think it says something about ILM, Lucasfilm, to like recognize that there's like room for improvement in what they're doing. You know, I feel like it'd be really easy for ILM to be like, oh yeah, well, like, you know, we're the best at visual effects and like, you know, we did like Endgame and Infinity War and we do all these big blockbuster movies. So like, screw like the, you know, one YouTuber with like 100,000 subscribers who like thinks he can do it better than us. I think it's really cool that they looked at this. They saw that there was like a room for improvement and they didn't shy away from that. And they just like, you know, doubled down and was just like, hey man, do you want to help us get better at this? And, you know, taking them on to sort of like move them, you know, forward into creating like pretty cool, you know, visual effects and everything. I think that just shows like where they are in terms of like wanting to progress like artistically, which I think is cool.
Yeah, so specifically the role is senior facial capture artist, like I said, which is a pretty huge like onboarding position for this excuse me, this YouTuber. But
yeah,
their role is to oversee and supervise de-aging tech processes for future de-aged or specific de-aged characters is the way the phrasing was. But Mike, I have to ask you, if they're being brought on in this capacity, you imagine this tech is going to be used more often at Lucasfilm. So who is getting de-aged next?
Leia. That's my vote. Okay, here's why. We already know that Disney Lucasfilm is not afraid of creating an entire feature-length film with an actress who's dead. And we already know that ILM, Disney, Lucasfilm are very much okay with, recreating Leia's likeness. We saw it happen twice. We saw it happen in Rogue One, and then we also saw a young Leia in The Rise of Skywalker. So I think that, if they're going to continue down the road of making TV shows that take place between, Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, and if they're going to continue using characters like Luke, as we saw at the end of The Mandalorian, I think it's probably likely that we might see some Leia too. I don't know how they're going to do that necessarily, because they have Mark Hamill's voice to voice Luke, and they don't have Carrie Fisher to voice Leia.
Right.
But I feel like they could probably do it. And I'm not sure if that's necessarily what's going to happen. But just looking at like what they've done in the past, it seems like maybe that's what they're looking at to do next.
Sure, and I think that also gets into the conversation of like, when it comes to Star Wars, why is it that some of the original trilogy characters have this only Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, only Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark sort of approach to them, where we saw other iconic characters get their prequel equivalent through a new actor, right? And I do think that that's something that Star Wars has always done really well, is, at least in my eyes, seeing the prequels introduce a younger version of this character that we all know and love, like Obi-Wan, even Vader, and to, I'd say, a similar extent, Alden Ehrenreich with Han Solo. Like, both of us really love him, and Donald Glover as Lando, right? Like, there are really inspired choices, I think, for a lot of these characters. So I don't know. I think it's exciting technology, right? If it's used in a capacity like what Luke Skywalker's role in Mando Season 2 was, but I don't know. Like, if we were to get a Luke Skywalker limited series about his Jedi Academy, right? Would you prefer to see the whole 6 hours led by a actor who's just standing on set and acting with people, and then Mark Hamill dubs it over and we deepfake his face? Or would you rather see a new actor like a Sebastian Stan entrusted with making a new chapter in the character of Luke Skywalker?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. When I said that, they might look at, de-aging Leia to use Leia, or even, continuing, de-aging Mark Hamill to create Luke, as they did at the end of season 2. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's what I want to happen. It's just that I think that that's might be where they're going.
Sure.
I personally don't really like the idea of like banking on using this technology to like create new intellectual property. I think that Star Wars, yeah, like Mark Hamill is Luke Skywalker and he always will be, but I don't think that necessarily means that there can't be like other iterations of the character and other interpretations of the character. And I feel like I would want to see like a Sebastian Stan, for instance, like try to capture Luke Skywalker in like a different way that maybe Mark Hamill could. Just because I think it would look better. Like plainly, like honestly, I think it would just be more believable. It would be more realistic. And then also, just like I said before, I am interested in just seeing, how do other actors, really talented actors and actresses, like what are their interpretations on these characters that we know and we love? Because at the end of the day, like Mark Hamill, yeah, he's like the original iteration of Luke Skywalker, but Luke Skywalker is much bigger than Mark Hamill. So
yeah.
That's my thought on it.
Also, just as one last thing, I'll say, in terms of just like a viewer experience, I think you would lose something, honestly, because it's Mark Hamill, unless I'm incorrect, isn't the one who was on set in costume acting with that group of people. Like, that was a different person, and then his voice and his face, his facial structure was put on in post. So, like, on that capacity, it works fine to do that. But for a full, like, series or film, I'd feel bad for whoever is on set Luke, because it's like, you're doing this performance, you're putting in work, and nobody's going to see it. Like, you're just basically there for other people to act off of, especially if you're the lead. That sucks. And it's different for, like, a Thanos or a Hulk, where they are a digital creation, because, like, Josh Brolin and Mark Ruffalo are on set acting and giving their performance, like, live. So I think if Mark Hamill was on set and then he was de-aged, like, his actual body and face in post, that I'd be fine with that, but that's not their strategy, and I don't think it would be. So, like, I don't know. I think recasting's fine, you know? Like,
I know, it's just like it sort of brings it to the point where it's like, okay, then they can recreate Mark Hamill without Mark Hamill even being there. I'm sure they can recreate Leia with Carrie Fisher being dead. Like, at what point does it become just, like, too much? You know, like, what are they gonna do? Like, create, like, a 6-hour TV show about, like, Leia in the Senate, and it's gonna be like, they're gonna take, like, old files from, like, The Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and like recreate her face and stuff like that, and, like, Frankenstein it onto, like, some actress who's never gonna get the credit for it. Like, I'm good with that.
Exactly, yeah, because,
like,
go ahead.
I totally agree with you. I'm just gonna say, like, I totally agree with you. I feel like you'd be losing a lot. But what were you gonna say?
The only other thing, like, remember how it felt off? Like, you could tell in The Rise of Skywalker. Like, I think they did their best, but you could tell.
Yeah. Totally.
Like, if there's another actor giving a performance for other people, unless they're fully replicating it, something will get lost in translation with the in-post added layer of Mark Hamill, right? So, like, it will come across, especially on a larger scale like that, to us, the audience, and nobody's going to enjoy that in the grand scheme. So, like, just recast.
Yeah, and, like, just one last thing I want to say about this is just, like, you know, the technology is getting really good, and sometimes, like, it's indistinguishable, but a lot of times, like, there still is that, like, uncanny valley problem, and, like, you know, as talented as, like, the artists at ILM are, it's just, like, really hard to convincingly recreate, like, a human being's face and, like, pass it off to another human being as real. So, like, you know, I don't think it's quite there yet. I don't know if it ever will be, to be honest. I'm sure it will be, but I don't know. It would just feel weird, and I'm okay with them recasting. Like I said, I think it gives them an opportunity to sort of, like, create a new interpretation of the character, which could be really cool, for all we know.
Absolutely. Well, in line with what we're talking about, Mike, why don't we jump down to this piece of San Diego Comic-Con news? An official poster commissioned by Disney by artist Russell Walks through Trends International was released for Comic-Con, and I want to bring this up first because it's kind of in line with what we're talking about how much Luke should we expect, what's the deal with the way they will tackle him in the future, because this official poster shows a Grogu levitating on a panel, seemingly crafting his own lightsaber, standing next to one Luke Skywalker holding a kyber crystal with the Force, and they're working together. It looks like they're training together. Grogu is crafting his lightsaber, and this is, in my headcanon, something they did a week after they met up. How do you think about this poster?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting. I saw this. I thought it was just a fan-made poster. I didn't realize that Disney actually commissioned this. That's wild. But yeah, I mean, one thing I did notice, Luke Skywalker, as you mentioned, is holding a kyber crystal. It's yellow, so does that mean Grogu has a yellow lightsaber? That's one thing. That's one question that I have. And yeah, I mean, in my headcanon, this happened very recently after he took him from the Mandalorian at the end of season 2. I agree. But it is interesting that they're seemingly leaning in to this story about Luke Skywalker and Grogu and maybe the training that they have to go through. And it makes me wonder, do you think that they're commissioning this and releasing it to sort of get people thinking about, what happened with Grogu after he was taken by Luke Skywalker? And do you think that this is something that we might see in season 3 whenever that comes up?
Sure. So my brain tells me this was just for fun. It's like, hey, you wonder what he was doing next? It was this. Like, I think, like, my brain is like, this is just a fun thing. They saw an opportunity. They're like, do it. People will love the art. And everybody does, right? But I do think there is something to the idea of they're doing this to get people thinking. And, like Grogu is not going to show up again this year. I don't know how much this image spread over the past few days. I definitely saw it once, but I didn't see many people, like many casual Star Wars fans I follow, talking about it. So
yeah,
I can't say if it seems like it was an attempt to just keep Grogu in the public zeitgeist and then just have them thinking of what could be next with him. But yeah, I think combined with, maybe it's just a coincidence that we're getting like the Mando Face documentary, and now we're hearing about this de-aging hire, and we're seeing this poster. Like, could be all just a bunch of coincidences, but I think there's something, like you're saying, to keep this in mind. Like, maybe this is something we explore. Like, I guess for you, if we did see this explored, what avenue and what medium would you want to see it explored through?
I mean, I think that it would probably make the most sense to be explored in, like, Mandalorian season 2. I'm thinking, you could easily sort of like tell 2 stories like at the same time. Like, this is what Grogu was up to, training with Luke Skywalker. At the same time, like, this is how Mando is like dealing with the loss of his kid, basically. I think that's one way to do it. I am just wondering, I just think that it's like a really interesting question. Like, it just seems like there's a lot to glean from the fact that, Disney commissioned this on their own. They're making these hires. I know you said it sort of seems coincidental, but that's just like, that is a bit too coincidental.
Yeah, like that's what my head's telling me to think, It's like, oh, it's just a coincidence. It's just like embargoes and just the timing of things that all worked out, so it's all happening around the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I see where you're coming from, but
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't know. I just feel like they wouldn't do something like this if there wasn't a reason behind it. They never do. So like, I don't know. It could easily just be like, this is like a fan's thought about like what happened, and that's it. There's nothing more to it. But the way that season two ended of The Mandalorian, I just feel like there has to be some sort of resolution to that. And I guess the way that I would see the story being played out is sort of like parallel to Mando, sort of dealing with the loss of Grogu in season 3. I don't know if you agree with that. Would you like to see it in Mandalorian, or would you want to see something different than that?
I could definitely see it as like the B plot of season 3, but I don't know. I feel like there's enough of it. There's enough questions there that it could warrant its own limited series or short film or like something, right? I could see a comic, honestly. Like, I could see them take this approach in any number of ways, but I don't, like, I'm still surprised that we didn't get an animated Han Luke Leia show. Like, maybe that's still coming eventually, but I'm surprised we didn't get our Clone Wars equivalent for the gap of 6 to 7. So maybe this is a story we explore on that capacity. Like, we see Luke in his temple and Ben and all that, and Grogu. Like, maybe that's how we do it, because I do think we all have a lot of questions about what Luke did after 6, right? And we have some answers, but there's no cohesive like representation of what he did. And to me, based off the track record of Star Wars, an animated series always made the most sense for this time period. But now, again, with de-aging and the Filoni verse of live action shows, like, what is the right expectation to have, you know?
I think, yeah, I agree. I think you're totally right. Like, I think just because of the fact that it seems like Disney, Lucasfilm are sort of, I don't want to say moving away from cartoons because they're definitely not. It just seems like they're seeing the success of live action when it comes to The Mandalorian and also like, the Marvel shows that they've been putting out. Um, and I'm sure that they're sort of thinking to themselves like, oh, like, this is a new medium for us to tell Star Wars stories. And I wouldn't be surprised if the answer to what was Luke up to between 6 and 7 is answered in, the Filoniverse. I think that's probably likely. I don't think that they would go through. I don't think they would go through the trouble of like bringing Luke into season 2 of The Mandalorian and like keeping it like a huge secret for them to just like never do anything with it again.
Yeah.
It got a lot of talk. It got a lot of eyes, and especially since, like I said, all these other shows are slated to be released. I would be surprised, honestly, if they didn't follow that story or start to do more live action stuff with characters that we know from the original trilogy.
Sure. And my question at that point is, there's absolutely people who love the movies who don't watch The Mandalorian, right?
Yeah.
So what's the smarter play? To really market the fact that Luke Skywalker is in season 3 as a recurring guest character, or put those resources into making a Luke Skywalker focus, like 4-episode limited series that runs concurrent with Mando, Boba Fett, Ahsoka, Rangers. If Rangers is still happening, I forget. But like, you know what I mean? Like, does it make more sense to use Luke Skywalker as a limited series to elevate all these other shows to a wider audience, or does it make more sense to really market him for season 3 to try to get more people to get in on Mandalorian?
I see where you're coming from. I think like it definitely wouldn't be a bad idea for Disney to sort of go the route of like, oh, like we have this technology to make Luke Skywalker, young again. Let's make a limited series about him. But I don't think I just don't see them doing that. I just think that it would make more narrative sense to have a character like Luke Skywalker to sort of just like appear every so often, like, mysterious sort of cameo figure in like all of these different shows. Just because like I think there is a level of mystery to the character that they want to keep. So there's that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they can't do this for other characters, right? Like, I don't know, they can pay Harrison Ford a crap ton of money to come and like voice a de-aged Han Solo or something like that. I'm sure he would for the right price, like so I would personally prefer to see these characters, or if we want to just talk about Luke Skywalker only, appear sort of just like every so often sprinkled into these other shows to sort of like build the hype for these other shows. Because I think that if you had a Luke Skywalker limited TV series, that would just draw too much attention away from all the other stuff,
I think that's a good way to look at it. And also, if you, again, we compare it to what Marvel does, right? Like, if you look at the Luke Skywalker in the Nick Fury role of the Filoniverse, let's say, where there's Ahsoka, whatever's going on with Rangers, Mando, Boba Fett, and we all know there's a story that they're building here. There's a greater narrative that we're leading towards with all these shows. Eventually, when we reach the conflict or the resolution or whatever of that story, I think if Luke pops up in these other series, it would make sense to have maybe this big grand finale to this major story be a film, and have Luke Skywalker be a major character in that film because he's appeared in all these other places like Nick Fury did in the Marvel movies leading to Avengers. So like, I think that could work, personally,
Yeah, I think that's more in line of like what I was thinking how they would use it. I just think, like I said, it would just be too distracting for them to be like, here's 6 episodes only about Luke, like while they're also trying to build up like the Book of Boba Fett and Ahsoka and like Rangers of the New Republic, if that's even happening anymore. So I mean, like I said, I mean, personally, I'd like to see another actor take the role, and start to like do these and have their own interpretations. But I'm sure that if they choose to go the de-aging route, it'll look pretty good.
Yeah, and if at the end of all of this, Luke is in the capacity of what we just ran through, I think at that point, if that's it with Luke, then yeah, doing what we've done already is fine. But if he's ever going to be the main character of a full-blown thing that isn't this hypothetical movie at the end of everything, then they should recast him. But if it is that capacity of he pops up here and there in all the shows and then he is a driving force of the finale, it's fine to do the de-aging thing with Mark Hamill if that's the extent of it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm excited to see like where they choose to go with this, because I think it could be really cool.
Absolutely,
really cool.
For sure. Well, seeing where other things are going, also at San Diego Comic-Con, the High Republic got an update. I don't know if you saw the key art for this, Mike, but they say the light of the Jedi goes dark.
Is that what they say? Is
yes.
that like the tagline to the marketing? Oh, I love it.
So this is the third wave of major additions to the High Republic story arc of Star Wars publishing. They're saying that this new wave is going to mark the end of Phase 1 of the High Republic, which is wild because the High Republic kicked off in January and we're almost done with Phase 1.
Yeah, it just started.
So this new wave includes 4 publications. The Fallen Star by Claudia Gray, being published by Del Rey. Eye of the Storm by Charles Soule through Marvel. Mission to Disaster from Justina Ireland through Disney Lucasfilm Press. And Midnight Horizon from Daniel Jose Older and Disney Lucasfilm Press. So, familiar cast of creators on this project. They've been with the High Republic since the beginning, which I think is good. You built this High Republic era off of the minds of these authors and other ones we're familiar with. So to see them, still leading the charge, I think is really good, especially within the first year, keeping that consistency. But what sticks out to you?
What really sticks out to me, and I don't know if you know the answer to this. It says, Charles Soule's Eye of the Storm is being published through Marvel. Is that supposed to be a comic, or is that supposed to be like an actual novel? Do you know?
I'm not 100% sure, because I know Marvel has done publishing in like full-blown novels before, but I can check Charles Soule's Twitter account real quick and see if he's had a comment about it, because I know this was announced very recently.
I would imagine it's probably a novel, just because of, Light of the Jedi was a Charles Soule joint, and he wrote that, in prose novel. He's a very prolific comic writer, but he's a great novelist. And I'm just really excited just to see where this first phase of the High Republic starts. I haven't read Rising Storm by Cavan Scott, which I think is one of the more recent additions to like the adult book narrative that's going on in the High Republic. I don't even really know what to call it, but whatever was started with the Light of the Jedi. And I've seen a lot of people talking about like cool little twists that are happening, and with the Light of the Jedi going dark, it sort of seems like, I don't know if they're trying to do, I don't know if they're going into the Empire Strikes Back of, the High Republic right now. But it does seem really cool that they're continuing on. Each of the authors that had started it are still with it, which, just adds to the consistency of the story that they're trying to tell, because we know that they've outlined it far beyond like even the first phase, I believe. I hope they did. I'm pretty sure they did. So it's cool to see them still like seeing out their vision to the end. So
definitely,
I still need to read The Rising Storm and Into the Dark. So I got to get on that.
I have a tweet from Charles Soule on July 23rd. He said, as just announced on San Diego Comic-Con Star Wars The High Republic panel, I'm writing Eye of the Storm, which drops January 2022. It's the story of Marchion Ro, which is interesting. Just fleshing out the leader of the Nile. But yeah, it looks like it is a comic. So
that's cool. I'm also subscribed to Charles Soule's newsletter, and this is why I asked the question, because I think he said recently in one of his newsletters that he's like writing another book for the High Republic. So yeah, it's cool to know that that's also still in the works, because Light of the Jedi was pretty great.
Yeah.
And Eye of the Storm sounds really interesting because, you know, Marchion Ro, I think, is a character that like Charles Soule had a lot to do in creating, and in Light of the Jedi, he had a lot to do with sort of building that character up. And so it's going to be really interesting to sort of get a better look into Marchion Ro's like background, if that is what Eye of the Storm is going to be covering, Marchion Ro's background and why he's doing what he's doing, and sort of just like, you know, the motivations behind it all. So very, very interesting. Now, does it look? It looks like The Fallen Star by Claudia Gray is like the next adult book. Like, you know how like they've been doing that sort of.
Yeah. Like, I forget the way they phrased it, but yeah, you're right. I think they phrased it as like adult reader or something like that. But yeah, there is, you know, Light of the Jedi, The Rising Storm, I believe, is the one by Kevin Scott. Those are the two, not mainline, but those are the two like great additions to that storyline they set up in Light of the Jedi, right at the beginning of the High Republic. Everything else is not ancillary, but is existing to support that through line. So yeah, I'm with you. From this list, it looks like the next Del Rey book from Claudia Gray, who is, no disrespect to everybody else, like one of the more respected, I think, and well-known writers, at least in our circles when it comes to Star Wars.
Sure.
Like, it seems like she would be able to carry on that torch, you know? Like, I still haven't read Into the Dark fully, but based off Master and Apprentice, she could, like, I would consider Master and Apprentice in that adult reader category that Light of the Jedi is. There's some pretty, like heavy dialogue in that story, you know? So I think she could do it. I think you're probably right. That's the next one in that line.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about To Master and Apprentice, I've also read Bloodline by Claudia Gray, and she does have, I don't know, I just have a good feeling about her writing the story, and, you know, the narrative kind of going into a darker place. I feel like she's well equipped with sort of like bringing that and sort of making that really visual and in the readers' heads. I'm just excited to see what she has to do, and I just need to catch up. That's what I need to do. That's what I've been thinking about.
So I think what I'll end up doing is, because the reason I got Into the Dark was because I really like what I've read of Claudia Gray's work, and I wanted to read that, even though it's in the YA category. But like, I think what I'll do is probably read the Kevin Scott novel at some point this year, read Into the Dark, and then for the other ones that are going to be continuing stories, I'll probably just check out the audio versions of them, and then moving forward, probably just read the mainline ones and then Claudia Gray's stuff. And mainline isn't the right word, but the ones that are progressing the story introduced in Light of the Jedi is what I mean.
Yeah, no, I hear what you mean. It's just exciting that, you know, I think to just like put a bow on it, I think it's exciting that a lot of these same authors are continuing with the project. That Definitely gives us a level of consistency that I think it really needs to be great. And from what I have read, it's already great. And yeah, I'm just excited to see like where this goes and what sort of stories they have to tell next. Definitely,
I agree. Well, looking to the future, we also have some new Black series that were announced through Hasbro this week. There's a lot here, Mike. I think some of the highlights are Carbonized Scout Trooper. We got also I think it's a carbonized one, but the Heavy, Jon Favreau's character from The Mandalorian. And what's exciting for me is lots and lots of Genndy Tartakovsky's Star Wars Clone Wars on the vintage line, which they can't fully replicate that style, right? Like, you could just show the Aayla Secura figure from that line to anybody, and it would be like, oh, it's just Aayla Secura. You wouldn't know it's Clone Wars Aayla Secura, but the clones specifically, they did try to replicate it in like their helmets, where like the helmet is like a little longer and tapered at the bottom, so like it looks like that style. I think they're cool. There's none that stood out to me as pickups, but you know, if we get that Gendy Obi-Wan, I might pick that up. The Gendy Anakin as well, perhaps.
I think it's really interesting that they're sort of bringing that back, don't you?
Yeah, that makes me feel so much joy. Love that style.
I mean, I just thinking like, why do you think that they're doing that? Just because like it's hard to differentiate like, oh, this is a character specifically from that version, right?
Yeah, I honestly, I think the reason they are probably giving it its spotlight is because we're in a downtime right now, and they know that this specific take on Star Wars has a really rabid following, right? So, like, people who love this take on the Clone Wars and grew up with it, to my knowledge, I've never met somebody who grew up with this and doesn't love it or is obsessed with one aspect of it, right? Like, everybody I've talked to who knows of this is like, oh yeah, like, this is what made me love Grievous. He's super cool in this. He's like a monster. Like, people who like Dirge, I think, that bounty hunter that got brought into canon, like, people love Dirge because of this. So, like, I think they just know it has its fans, and they want to give it the respect it deserves because it was forgotten for a long time. So
no, I think it's really cool, and yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's cool too because it looks like it's part of the 50th anniversary of Lucasfilm, so maybe that's part of it. Maybe they're just kind of throwing back to things that were in the past, and they want to give credence to those.
Yeah, I do like the boxes too because it has the Star Wars Clone Wars logo and the animated version of that character as their portrait. So it's nice. It looks cool. They're respecting the art. But yeah, it's cool to see this. I'm not reading into this. I would love if we got another take on Star Wars through the studio, but I doubt we ever will. But yeah, it's cool that it's getting more attention.
I was gonna say, you know, don't speak too soon because next week we're gonna hear about Gendy Tartakovsky's being hired by Lucasfilm. No, that would be sick though.
Yeah. So hey, you know, Visions is looking to be bonkers. I never would have expected them to do that. So maybe I'll never say never, but it's unlikely in my eyes. So
never say never. Yeah.
Speaking of unlikely, we got some rumors in the Force to bring up this week, specifically one via LRM, which is a YouTube channel I think has been brought up on the show recently. They're saying through an unverified source, they're just saying like, hey, I've heard Ahsoka, the series, has cast its Ezra and Grand Admiral Thrawn in Mena Massoud, who played Aladdin in the live-action Disney Aladdin with Will Smith, and Lars Mikkelsen. So that's our Ezra and Thrawn potentially. Again, grain of salt. I am not familiar with this channel or their history of breaking news, but Mike, on initial reading of this, how do you feel about this casting?
So I wasn't very familiar with the actor who is rumored to play Ezra, Mena Massoud. You brought up at the beginning of this, and also before we recorded, that he played Aladdin, and yeah, I guess that you know, we were talking about this pre-recording. Ezra does have kind of Aladdin vibes, so that does seems like it fits. I'm looking at photos of him, and yeah, I think it could work. When we talk about Lars Mikkelsen, though, I think that is a really, really good casting. And I don't think it's that surprising that we're getting information about or potential information about who is playing these characters, because it's basically been confirmed that at some point Grand Admiral Thrawn is going to show up in the Ahsoka show, just based off of season 2, episode 5 of The Mandalorian, where Ahsoka brings that up by him up by name. And, you know, realizing that Ezra went missing with Thrawn at the end of Rebels, you sort of connect the dots and think that Ezra Bridger may be showing up in that show as well. So, like I said, Mena Massoud, I'm not familiar with his work, but, you know, I do see Ezra as an Aladdin type figure, if that means anything. But Lars Mikkelsen, I think, is a really interesting choice for an actor, but I think it could work really good.
Yeah, I agree. I was, like you said, we talked a bit before the show. The first time I watched the first episode of Rebels, I saw Ezra and I was like, oh, like, very truly the Aladdin comparison is there, because he was essentially a street rat stealing to eat and running
Sure.
through markets, you know? So, like, there is a comparison there. I think that's just more coincidental. Like, I could see a world where maybe this is not fully true, and like maybe because it's like, oh, Disney had a live action version of Aladdin, Ezra is introduced sort of in a similar character role, similar features. Like, I think they could probably be like, oh, doesn't this make so much sense? Of course they'd bring him back because they've worked with him before. So like, I'm not gonna fully believe this, but like you said, I am expecting both these characters to be in the Ahsoka show for some level of a role. But yeah, interesting choices if these really are the truth, right? Because I think you're right, they do make enough sense and you can see them fall into that role.
Definitely. Yeah, so I guess my next question was going to be like, do you think that both of these characters have to be in season 1 of Ahsoka? To me, like, you know, when Ahsoka and the Mandalorian was like, where is Grand Admiral Thrawn, right? I was thinking maybe like that show that's going to take place, you know, that's going to center around her. I don't know. Like, I was thinking maybe it would take her like a season or two to sort of like find Ezra or Thrawn, but you know, hey, could be pretty quick into it. So who knows?
I imagine it would be a finale thing. Like, season 1 finale is the reveal of like, we found him. That's the end.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, that's true. So you have to have that sort of lockdown for the first season then. You know, it also makes me think about who is that actor who was like teasing people on Twitter about being cast as Ezra Bridger, and like he kind of wanted to. Yes. You know, I guess not all is lost for Rahul Kohli, but it's not looking pretty if these rumors are to be believed.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. I imagine we'll learn more about Ahsoka in the first half of next year. I don't expect to see anything about it this year, but you know, when casting hits, we'll talk about it. But
oh yeah, we'll see how right we were.
Yeah. Until then, Mike, we do have a new episode of The Bad Batch to discuss. I believe this is episode 12 or 13.
I think it's 13.
Okay.
But I don't know.
Infested. A new episode sees the Bad Batch assisting a...
Battle the Flood.
Yep, exactly. I was just thinking that like 5 minutes ago. I was like, wow, yeah, this is like the Halo episode.
Yeah.
Sid is in distress. We got a new management of the Bad Batch relationship with the underworld. So overall, putting aside the Halo comparison for this moment, what did you think of this episode?
You know, I thought it was lackluster. I kind of got bored halfway through it, to be honest. Like, it was another one of those job of the week type episodes, which is fine, and I've actually come to really enjoy it over the past maybe like 9 episodes of the Bad Batch. But yeah, for whatever reason, this one kind of like, it didn't ever really catch me. I don't know if it was a problem with like the pacing or something like that. But yeah, it just seemed boring. And like many of the episodes in the Bad Batch, entirely inconsequential. So yeah, take that as you will. I thought it was interesting. It was an interesting plot. It was an interesting, you know, idea for an episode, but they kind of started and ended at the same place.
Sure.
As it has been for many of these episodes. So
I'll say, when it comes to the Job of the Week episodes, this is one of the ones I've liked more. Like, specifically the job. And it is because I was like, oh, it's Halo. It's the Flood.
And it's also kind of like a heist. We all know that Christian likes this heist stuff.
I do. But yeah, it's basically it's Alien, right? It's like, hey, we're on this planet. There's this this infestation of some creature. There's horror elements. Like the tropes the episode plays with, I think was the most fun I had with the episode. But you know, I like seeing Star Wars adapt to other genre stuff that I'm already a fan of. So seeing them tackle sci-fi horror to a degree, and of course the heist vibes, like it was a fun time. But again, I think this is the last week we can have an episode like this. You know, there are 3 more episodes. 3-episode arcs are what make the Clone Wars, and I know this is a different show very clearly, but going into it was like, hey, it's basically season 8.
Yeah,
I would say the premiere of the Bad Batch and maybe episode 2 are kind of like a 3-episode arc if you split them up, because it's like episode 1 and 2 combined are like 90 minutes and it's kind of telling one story.
definitely. Yeah.
I think that you could have split those into, 3 episodes and have a complete arc there. And I hope that that's reflected in the final 3 episodes of the show. But again, specifically with this one, I think, the actual job was fun. Seeing Tech do his thing was cool. Seeing everybody work together to try and figure out the scenario, fine. Omega, once again, being sort of the heart and conscience of Hunter through the relationship with the new guy, I forget his name. It was all solid, nothing was bad. It was like, okay, this is kind of what I come to expect from these characters, but we do have some potential teases in this episode, Mike, when it comes to the underworld, because we see, I think, the Pikes again, right?
Yep.
I've seen some people speculating. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying that we've heard about the Pikes before, and
right.
Yeah, that we do see them again. They have cool voices.
Yeah, I've seen some people speculating that because of that, and because of this show specifically, I'd say a good half of the episodes is a focus of them operating in the underworld through Sid. Like, maybe is potentially leading towards a season 2 conflict where they come into an agreement or confrontation with Darth Maul, because at this point he's building the Crimson Dawn in the background, so like, is that something that would excite you? If I think it's hard to deny that the Bad Batch so far is mostly about the underworld, so like exploring that in a second season. Yes, no? What do you think?
I think that's probably. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that's probably where they're going. If that, it could even be the last arc of this season.
Sure.
Too.
Yeah.
We just don't know yet. Because like you mentioned, and like I said before, the past like 9 episodes of this TV show have been like job of the week. Like, we're working for Sid, we're doing some questionable things, right? And yeah, I think that with all the other stuff that we know from Solo, the stuff that we saw at the end of the Clone Wars season 7 on Mandalore, where Maul was like talking with all the crime bosses, it would make sense for them to cross paths with Crimson Dawn or something like that, right? Or Kira shows up in one of their job of the weeks, right? And that's the link between him, the Bad Batch, and Maul. So I think that's most likely. I think that's probably where it's gonna go. But I think that sort of is. It makes me question, like, why are we doing that? Because, like, to me, I thought the main story was like this conflict between Crosshair and the Bad Batch, and like what the Kaminoans are trying to do with like Omega and stuff like that. And I know that it would be hard to talk about that all the time, but it just seems like they brought it up and they just like forgot about it. And to sort of bring in more stuff with like crime and everything, it just seems like it. To me, it may feel like it's muddying the waters a little bit. But I I almost expect that that's where they're going though. Talking about like the underworld and like crime and connecting it with Maul, just because they have left so many other breadcrumbs in previous releases, movies, TV, that it wouldn't make sense for them to sort of just like completely not talk about that at all, especially when the Bad Batch are doing stuff in the underworld all the time.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it makes sense. I think, Darth Maul hops in a ship and flies off like he's Megatron on an episode of Transformers, on a Saturday. It's like, oh, I'll get you next time. And then he just flies away at the end of season 7. So, like, Maul, it's so wild because, like, Maul in Phantom Menace is iconic, but the reason Maul as a character is relevant, like, Maul, I think, is more of an animated show character. And you cannot, like, nobody would argue against this, but he is an animated series staple at this point in Star Wars, where I think it would absolutely make sense. It's like, oh, a new show? Maul's the villain. Like, it makes sense. And this is a point in his life that we haven't really fleshed out yet, because that was kind of teed up in Solo, and we all know how that turned out. But, yeah, I'm with you. I think making Season 2 of The Bad Batch more focused on this, and then at least at that point, we'd have more of a through line of the crime stories, and then in the background, you could have the Kaminoan plot, where if it doesn't get resolved this season with Crosshair and Omega and the Prime Minister, like, that could be an undercurrent of Season 2 in a more, what feels like strong capacity than trying to find the identity of the show, which is what Season 1 has kind of been, and I think that's kind of where, in hindsight, we'll probably all like the show more, because on a rewatch, we'll know what to expect, we'll know what the show is, we'll know the extent of what new Star Wars content we're getting, and genuinely, I think The Bad Batch, through like a binge viewing, knowing where we'll be going with Season 2, hopefully after a finale, will just make it stronger, hopefully.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. I think maybe I'm a little bit too critical about this show, in the sense that, like, I'm watching it and I'm like, what is happening? Where are we going? Like, what happened? What about all this other stuff that you brought up before that's not being answered? And I think you could bring up a good point in the sense that, like, once this show is finished and we can look at it, hindsight 2020, we might have different opinions on it. If you just look at the Clone Wars, right? Think about the Clone Wars. If like Season 2 of the Clone Wars was being released right now in the same manner, we'd be like, what the heck is happening? Like, So, and then, now when we look at the Clone Wars, we're like, that's a great piece of TV. Yeah, that's a great piece of TV, and it tells a really great Star Wars story, as disjointed as it is. This is where it was leading to, and we know this, that, and the other thing. We just don't know about the Bad Batch yet. So I think what you're saying does have a lot of is very important. I just, like, I don't know. To me, I feel like, I don't know if, like, I'm just being too critical, but, like, I feel like when you bring up something as integral to the story as, like, what the Bad Batch did in the first 3 episodes, and then you just never talk about it again, to me that's just a little annoying. And like, I would be a little annoyed if they just, like, never talked about it again in Season 1, and then just, like, brought it up again in Season 2. I'd be like, what the heck?
Yeah,
but,
I mean, I don't think you're being too critical. I think that's a fair thing to think about the show, right? Because if memory serves, you and many other people felt a similar way with Mando Season 1, right? Where it's like, hey, you introduce this plot of the Empire remnants and Grogu, and then basically the whole show goes by and you don't touch on it again until the final 2 episodes, right? So, like, I think that's a fair criticism to have of the show, and the reason why it might feel a bit more elevated is because we went into this show thinking it was Season 8 of Clone Wars, which at the first episode it felt like it was. And since then, it's shifted more towards, I guess, Season 1 of The Mandalorian, where it's like, hey, we're just checking the pulse of the galaxy, we're figuring out what the show is, and hopefully by the end of the season 1, we have an answer to one of the questions brought up in the early episodes, which, again, similar to Mandalorian, I imagine will mimic that. But yeah, I'm glad you brought up Clone Wars season 1 and 2 specifically, because like I remember when I was watching season 1 of Clone Wars as it was airing, I was like kind of getting tired of it by the end. I was like, this is just kind of whatever, doesn't feel like it's important. But I remember the marketing for season 2 being like, the bounty hunters are here. There's this new character named Cad Bane, and it's a serious show now. The font is red. So like I could see Bad Batch even mimic that, of like, we get season 1, it's like, hey, this is what the show is, this is what you should expect out of this series, and season 2 has a more defined overall story because now we've set up the characters, the world, and season 2 has a defined villain, a defined conflict that we work towards every week, and then in the background there's the more mystical aspect of Star Wars being uncovered.
If the end of season 1, right, if the next 3 episodes can sort of like bring back elements of what they set up in like the first 3 episodes of the Bad Batch, and like maybe even set up something even larger for season 2, like a Darth Maul, I would be fine with that, right? That would signal to me as the viewer that we're moving somewhere with the stuff that we brought up before, right? And to me right now, it just seems like they're not interested in really doing that, or they just haven't had the time to like touch upon those things. So if they're able to sort of like weave those 2 things, and it doesn't even have to be Maul, it could be something else. I don't know.
Honestly, do
I'd
Kira.
like it to be Maul, but yeah, Kira, whatever. If they can sort of like meld those 2 things together and sort of like show the viewer like, hey, this is where we're going in a season 2, like it's going to be a little bit more like constructed in its format, like that would be fine with me, because then I'd know that there's something like else going on, something like to look forward to going forward. But as of right now, it just seems like you said, how you felt watching season 1, it was like, okay, like this stuff doesn't seem like it's cool, but like, why are we watching this, right?
Yeah, and I do think that there's something to many season 1s and even like first movies and series of like, it has the onus of doing a lot of setup, and I think season 1 of Bad Batch, if hopefully it ends up where we're discussing we want it to go for a season 2 setup, like if that comes to fruition, I think season 1 we'll look at more fondly, because it's like, okay, we spent all this time learning the characters. I think we can all define who each member of the Batch, and I'd say even like Omega and Sid, are morally, and what their purpose is in this series. And that's what season 1 is about. And I think season 1, them being on the run, makes it feel more disjointed, because it's like, what are we doing now? Like, moment to moment, what is this group doing to stay alive? Where if we end up in a spot that it seems like we're building towards, of them just being this mercenary group, then season 2, you introduce a villain, you do have something you feel like you're building towards, rather than the build of season 1 being, we just gotta stay alive. So I think all those things combined, again, hindsight for the Bad Batch season 1, we'll look at it more fondly, but I think maybe there's an unfair amount of pressure on the next 3 episodes and a potential season 2, which I don't even know if that's confirmed, but yeah, it's interesting stuff with the Bad Batch right now.
Yeah, I mean, there is a heavy burden on a first season for anything, and I agree with you. And I guess we're never going to really know where this fits in until the show is finished or close to being finished. We're not at that point yet. I'm curious, just I don't know if you have any additional thoughts, but just like, what are you expecting out of the next 3 episodes? Like, for me at least, like if the next episode is released and it doesn't hint towards like setting something up, I'm gonna be a little disappointed. That's just me though.
Yeah, I think for sure what we need is season 1 to end off with like at the very least, it has to answer some things from season 1, episode 1. I don't need full-blown answers, but just like maybe a bit more detailed into what the plan for Omega was. Like this enhanced clone army, like something of substantial like content on that front. Anything to sort of put a pin in that. It doesn't have to be a complete thing. Just be like, oh, this was the plan, fell through, not the problem anymore. That's fine.
Yeah.
At the very least, I am hoping the next 3 episodes give us that and give us some sort of development with Crosshair. I don't need Crosshair to be fully won over. I don't need him to be killed. I just need to see some sort of tease of like where he's at right now, how he's changed since episode 1 and 2 and 3. At the most,
yeah,
I could see them set up season 2. I don't know if I need them to right now, but I'm hoping the end of the season 1 is at least giving me that, and then I'll feel content.
I think that's a fair expectation. I think it may be asking for a little bit too much for them to set up, like, you know, a season 2 and like us having a pretty clear idea about where the direction is that they're going in.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it is fair to ask, or to be expecting at least, some of those questions from that opening arc, if you will, to be answered. And yeah, I think if that doesn't happen, at the very least, that's cause for not concern, just like I would just be disappointed, I think. So
I agree. I think it's fair to hope for a setup, right? Like even if it is just some wild image and then cut to credits, and then at the end of the credits like the Bad Batch will return season 2. Cool. You know?
Fine. Yeah. Just something. if it ends up with Hunter, with like, I don't know, like Hunter being like, you know what, I am a nice guy now, and then like the friggin' series ends, I'd be like, okay, that was lame. But I'm sure we'll get something good.
What if the final shot of season 2 is somebody like Sid? Okay, let's say Sid is having a conversation in an office and Hunter's there, and then the Bad Batch are like, you know what, we're gonna officially make this thing official, we're gonna work together, or this new guy, whoever, right? Some agreement is made, the Batch leaves, and then we hang on this character, either Sid or the new guy, in an office. They close the blinds, they get a hologram call. It's Darth Maul sitting in a chair, he takes his hood off being like, we're gonna work on the Crimson Dawn.
and he ignites his lightsaber for no reason.
Yes. Cut to credits.
That'd be cool. That'd be sick.
Yeah.
I think, like, you know, if you know, just talking about it, like I hope that this is their chance, right? This is they have 3 episodes left. This is their chance to do something.
Yeah.
Right. Do something. I don't know what it's gonna be, but you know, do something different than what you've been doing for the past like 12 episodes, please.
Yeah.
That's sort of like what my thought process is on it. So
yeah, I think before the finale, I would like to rewatch the first episode just as a refresher, because I feel like it's been so long since I thought about what they actually bring up there, just to see what the resolution's like. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm hopeful for the finale, hopeful for the next couple episodes. If next week is a filler episode, and maybe filler's not fair, but another job of the week, like, I don't know, dude. Like, I think you need more than 2 episodes to wrap up some of these things.
Agreed. I you know, well, I guess we'll have to see. We have 3 episodes left. If the next one is not anything special, then we might be having a different type of conversation next week. So we'll have to see.
Yeah. Well, until then, Mike, where can everybody find you?
You can follow me on Twitter at Mike P. Connors.
Very nice. You can follow me on Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok at Chun2D2, as well as here, youtube.com/joyclicks for the video version of Jedi Knights in the playlist for Jedi Knights, alongside all the other shows on Joyclicks, like the Long Play Club, We just recently wrapped up Metal Gear Solid 5, Phantom Pain, so we're done with Metal Gear Solid at the moment.
Wow.
Took
crazy
several months, but we have a ranking. We have them all beaten. We are deliberating the next game, so look forward to that in the future, but you can check that out. As well as Excelsior, our Marvel show, and Gamescast, our games podcast. All of these available on youtube.com/joyclicks. If you want the audio version of Jedi Knights, you can check it out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your service of choice. Rating and reviewing, if you can, would be very helpful because it takes a second, and we appreciate you for doing it. It helps the show reach more people and makes us happy.
Indeed.
And if you
makes us very, very happy.
Yes, makes us quite happy. And if you want to support us even further, patreon.com/joyclicks at the $1 and $5 tiers. $5 tier will give you producer credit for this show and every show we do, like Aaron Easton and Charles Applin. So thank you very much. And that is Jedi Knights, episode 91. Look forward to next week with another episode of The Bad Batch. Hopefully, it feels bad a little bit, Mike, because I feel like every time we talk Bad Batch, there's always the same looming cloud over the conversation. So I just hope it's gone next week.
I hope it's gone too. I don't, Christian, I don't like being negative. And I don't think that we're being too negative, but I want something to be really excited about. So hopefully that comes our way.
Yeah, and even if it's just like really strong character moments, that's great, but
yeah.
We'll see what happens, but until then, we're fine, everything's fine. How are you?
May the force be with you.
Oh, yes, you're right. Beep is up.